Hello, Jordan Chariton live with Louis DeAngelis. It is Friday, March 24th, 2023 in the United Corporations of America. I have been sick all week, starting to feel a little better, fortunately, but going live a little bit early because I got to go to a wedding a little bit later. But we're going to have a bit of a toxic Easter egg hunt ahead of Easter. So I wish I was joking, but unfortunately we're not. How you doing, Louis?
I'm doing all right, minus the toxic Easter egg news. I got a couple texts from all sorts of different people over the last 24 hours about this. Unfortunately, maybe an extra Easter surprise in your Easter egg this year. We hope not. I mean, the fact that this is going on seems a little outrageous to me, and we'll get into some of the details of that in a little bit here. We're also going to have Candace DeSanzo, mother of 5, who lives in East Palestine. She's going to be joining us in just a couple minutes here. She's one of the concerned parents who reached out about this, very rightfully concerned parents who reached out about this. Honestly, I was shocked to see that anyone thinks that having an Easter egg hunt in East Palestine right now is a good idea. I don't know. I don't know how you make that decision.
But this is why I'm Jewish. We don't do any hunting of any kind. In fact, we actually have unleavened bread for a week or two. Before we get to this, smash that like button, share the live stream. We're going to do this story. Louis is going to take some calls too. So you'll be able to call in a little bit on East Palestine primarily. But, if anybody's indicted while we're live or who knows, we'll see what happens. We're almost at 142,000 subscribers. So if you're not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Who knows? Maybe we could get closer to 142,000 while we're live. Yes, my hair is looking much better. Went to the barber who looked at me in horror when I did to myself. It took a while. It was probably the longest haircut I've ever had because she had to even it out. So now it just, short. But
yeah, no. I forgot while you were not feeling well this week. When you just popped in here a couple minutes ago, I was shocked that on the short hair, but it is looking a lot better. So that's good.
Yes. It wasn't the short hair. Had a cold, not COVID, but who knows? Anyway, smash that like button, share this live stream. By the way, Louis, we still have more reporting from Lewis's last trip to East Palestine that we're going to be posting over the next few days. So if you're not yet a Status Coup member, and you want us to continue, key phrase, want us to continue reporting on the ground in East Palestine, you're going to have to help us afford it. You're going to have to help us pay for these trips. So sign up today if you can before you spend money on the weekend. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Shout out to David signed up. Austerity Before Fascism signed up. I don't know what your real name is, but that's a pretty cool code name. Austerity Before Fascism, and Paulette signed up. So those are 3 new members yesterday. We could get a couple more today. So Louis, take it from here. We're going to have a guest on soon, but tell us what you started hearing about because this happens. I guess we should start with it's 49 days after this derailment. As you can see, the mainstream media has moved on. You were the only national reporter that we know about that was there last week for a community meeting, as well as interviewing residents. Yourself, as well as I, including this morning, are getting phone calls from residents who are getting jerked around by "We'll do the right thing." Norfolk Southern, they're not doing the right thing. Residents are still sick. And essentially it's been normalized because the media has moved on from it. And aside from a few politicians, most politicians are focused on other things. Right. So all of this is happening while there's a little friction in town, between business owners who kind of want to get back to normal. Their businesses have been hurt. They want people who have relocated maybe to come back. They want to kind of things to go back to normal because their businesses, which we understand, have been hit hard. But then there's the people saying, well, we can't go back to normal because the town still reeks.
Right.
And we're sick and health before.
Right. And I would say it'd be one thing to be getting that go back to normal sentiment if residents were being given the appropriate test results to prove to them that things are fine. But, as I dug into this Easter egg hunt story that we're going to get into, and we're going to have resident Candace DeSanzo on to talk about shortly, it started to get a little crazier and crazier as you dig further into it. So obviously, right off the outset, having an Easter egg hunt in a town that just had a massive chemical explosion essentially happen, and it seems like a bad idea to start right off the bat. Okay, now you can say it's been 6 weeks, it's been almost 7 weeks at this point since this occurred. Maybe things are starting to become more normal, but unfortunately we'll get to this a little bit later. Dr. Welton, who is somebody who's been doing tests in town, actually just posted on Twitter about an hour and a half ago a result with a PID air detector of 2.1 parts per million, which is well above the threshold of safety for folks. Granted, it was right near one of these creeks, but very notably, one of these creeks that is contaminated runs right by the entrance to the park where this Easter egg hunt is scheduled to be taking place in just another week and a half or so. So that's not great. You also look into this a little bit further of while I was at that city council meeting a couple weeks ago, or not a couple weeks ago, last week at this point, the council did seem concerned about potential contamination at the park. And I can talk about that in a few different ways. Number one, they mentioned that they closed the playground in this park, at least temporarily, to sanitize the entire thing and also remove all of the mulch from the playground and replace it with brand new mulch. The council chimed in also adding that they were going to go through and clean all of the tennis courts. So if they're concerned enough to have to remove all of the mulch from the park to go through and clean all of this stuff, there's definitely concern about contamination still in the park. Not to mention, again, the entrance to the park is this area that we've shown you before with the aeration going on inside of the heavily polluted Leslie Run at this point, where they're actually spraying a lot of these chemicals in the air. So there's definitely a lot of real concern going on here. And the last thing that I'll add to this too is that at this point, there has been soil testing being done in the area. I can't confirm if any of it has been done specifically right in the park at this point yet, but there have been 0 results publicly made available to any residents of East Palestine or to anybody of what these results are anywhere in town, really, but in the park in particular. It would seem to me that you would want to wait until the results came in and the results showed that things were actually safe in the park before you are to send a bunch of children to have an Easter egg hunt. That's just my thoughts, but.
So let me, we're about to bring on a guest that you've spoken with a few times, but let me just get a little bombastic here for the weekend. First of all, just so everybody's getting it, because people are asking, they're having this Easter egg hunt, which normal, it gets some fun for kids. Families get together in normal times in East Palestine City Park, which is basically next to creeks that have been contaminated. It's very close to where temporary dams have overflowed several times, overflowing with contaminated water. It's in an area that, from what residents have said, still smells.
I can confirm that too. That I wore a respirator while I was in that area near where they were doing the aeration while I was there, to give you an idea.
Right. And I just put it in the super chat. Lewis wrote a Substack piece, so definitely read that. But just to give you kind of the, twisted pretzel logic, what is it? The East Palestine Park Board or something like that?
Yeah.
The Park Board, their response to this is, well, the egg hunt this year will be in a designated, cleaned and sanitized area, including the community center, basketball, and tennis courts. Well, with all due respect, designated by who that it's clean and sanitized?
Right.
I'm sure the folks on the East Palestine Park Board are fine fellas and ladies, but who's designated it cleaned and sanitized? The EPA, Governor DeWine,
Norfolk Southern.
And by the way, like Lewis said at the city council meeting, that you were the only let's repeat. Lewis was the only reporter there, national reporter there.
0 cameras in the room besides Colin, who was standing there with me. Yep.
So the official said that they were temporarily closing the tennis courts and closing the playground to clean, correct?
Yes.
So they're closing the tennis courts and the playground to clean, but that's where this Easter egg hunt is going to be, correct?
Yes. Yep. And it's scary too, because we've seen some of the cleaning stories so far in this. Very early on in this, I broke the news that the cleaning company that was being used to clean residential homes is not a hazmat certified cleaning company. And they were essentially spraying germ cleaner on top of these chemicals and then telling folks their homes were safe to enter. They didn't need to wipe anything down, when in reality, their homes weren't being cleaned at all. So
It's just, you can't make this up. And, even for argument's sake, and I'm a new parent. My daughter's 4 months old, so now I could kind of speak about this. Even for argument's sake, let's say it is safe, or this particular area is more safe. Why would you even risk it? And I'm not like second guessing parents who decide to bring their kids. That's your choice. But like, why would the town risk it other than we need to give off this appearance of everything is back to normal? Let's talk to Candace here, who is a resident. If you want to set it up, since you've interviewed Candace several times.
Yeah, for sure. So I've met Candace a bunch of occasions at this point. On our first trip, we had an interview that we posted on the channel, and I mean, her heartbreaking story of, Candace is a mother of 5 kids. Unfortunately, several of her kids were getting sick. At least one of them ended up briefly in the hospital during this and needed to be decontaminated before anyone in the hospital would actually, perform any treatments on her child at that point. Candace had to fight tooth and nail to get any sort of money to be able to relocate her family. Fortunately, she has been able to relocate, at least temporarily. But in that relocation process, she told us recently on a live stream that it took her 23 hours over 3 days to be able to get relocation money for 2 weeks for her family. Candace is one of the folks who sent this story to me, or sent this information to me about the Easter egg hunt going on. I will bring Candace in right now here. Candace, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for taking the time to join us again. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess right off the bat here, I mean, you sent me this the other day. You're not the only one. I got a screenshot of this event from probably 5 or 6 different parents really concerned about this event going on. What are your general thoughts about the idea of having an Easter egg hunt in East Palestine this year?
Well, as soon as I seen the flyer posted on social media, I immediately commented, out of an abundance of caution, at least, why would you even hold something like that in the park, where we know that they had multiple containers filled with the socks that were literally absorbing all the toxins that were running down Sulphur Run, Leslie Run, and other contaminated creeks. Not to mention, like you guys had already talked about, the dam overflowing right at the entrance of the park. Mm-hmm. And yes, at the last city council meeting you were at, they did speak about going in and spraying off the tennis courts and attempting to clean the playground. But to me, if it's not done by a certified hazmat cleaning crew, it's not clean. And basically, I got shot down on social media because there are a lot of folks that want to go back to normal. But what they're not understanding is there is no normal left there. I'm a mother of 5 children. And if I wouldn't say anything, that would be like me saying, well, as long as my kids don't die, I don't care if your children die. And I do care. I care about every resident of East Palestine. And, we're supposed to be EP strong here. But what's happening is the narrative is changing to it's safe. And the people that are sick, suffering, displaced, and cannot go on with normal life are being forgotten about. And it's just absolutely appalling.
No, and I want to clarify one thing you said in the beginning of that too, of these sort of, I don't know the correct terminology for them, but you mentioned socks. These are essentially like tube looking things that are being placed in the contaminated streams and creeks that are supposed to help kind of filter out some of the chemicals that are going downstream. And you and several others have told me and shown images of these tubes or these socks essentially lined up in like dumpsters or containers, essentially all up the park road. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, and many residents went up there and stated that they checked it out when those containers were there and that there was oil and debris all over the ground. So, hey, let's start an Easter egg hunt there for small, innocent children.
Yeah, I mean, It seems negligent at best, but the fact that the discussion is even happening here is ridiculous. Has anyone in the city council or anyone in a position of power, said any rationale as to why they're feeling okay about doing this? I mean, to me, you pointed out in one of your Facebook posts, we don't have soil testing results from this park.
There's absolutely zero soil testing results back from the park. So you don't even know what you're exposing your children to. Mm-hmm. It's the known and the unknown chemicals. So you don't even know what risk you're putting children and your residents at, and are allowing events like this to happen in a place that you can't even confirm is safe. Because there's been no testing done. And it's absolutely mind-blowing to me that things like this can occur. I feel that whoever is allowing this to happen should be held criminally liable. It's people's lives at stake. And I know for one, I'm not letting my children roll around on the basketball court, whether it's been cleaned or not, until there's testing done that scientifically proves that it's safe, and not testing done by Norfolk Southern or the EPA, because they are known at this point to not be trusted.
And also, I think it's important to point out, this is not the first time the city and the state, let's talk about the state here, have allowed kids and anyone for that matter to go play in a chemical. They allowed kids for weeks to play by the creek. The EPA, I think it was a month later, the EPA had said, yeah, I would advise kids not to play by the creek, after allowing them to play by the creek for weeks. And then they finally put up a sign saying, don't go here. Yeah. So it's so backwards. God knows, not to be dramatic, what those kids were exposed to in those few weeks after the derailment and uncontrolled burn. Playing by the creek, not to mention adults who are jogging. We know the animals. So it just seems like either gross incompetence or worse. This is a continuation of that.
Well, there's multiple residents, Jordan, that have even spoke to having their dogs up at the dog park in the park, and their animals fell ill. So if animals are falling ill and animal owners are refusing to bring their pets into the park, why would you invite children that don't have a choice to go there if their parents decide to go to the park? It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Right. And the unfortunate reality here too is that, we talked about earlier in the week, Candace, I know you've seen this article from The Guardian. The state of Indiana did testing on soil that was brought to their state to be, soil that was removed from the ground zero area. Granted, am I saying soil in the park is going to be as contaminated? Probably not, because it's not right there. But that soil was tested, and it popped up at hundreds of times the level for what the EPA in 2010 said poses a cancer risk from exposure to dioxins. So when we don't have these test results done in the park, for dioxins or for anything, we don't have test results for soil in the park at all at this point. But the risk here is, an unfortunate surprise 10 years down the line, maybe sooner, maybe later, of the risks that these kids could be, could essentially be putting themselves into. It's terrible. Not even putting themselves into, that their parents could be putting them into.
And it's all goes to do with this narrative of trying to get back to normalcy. Trust me, I would love to go home and go back to my normal life. People want to act like we're out on a vacation and what we're doing is fun. I was in give up mode yesterday, and you do want to at times just give up and go back home and have normal life. But then when you take a step back and you look at what has happened here, people want to believe that large plume went off and that hundreds of thousands of gallons, I'll say it again, of toxic materials were spilled right in your backyard. I just have to accept the fact that there is no normalcy left. There's no going home. There's no going back to my old life. That life for me is essentially gone. And I don't want to be negative for the people that have decided to stay. I just don't understand how some people think so unlogically that thousands and hundreds of thousands of gallons of toxic materials are not going to cause harm.
And Candace, for those that aren't familiar, because I thought you and Lewis's original interview was so powerful, could you just share, you got 5 children, 3 of them live with you, and you were told by the doctors that you could not bring your kids in until they took a decontamination shower. And your kid was basically, as you were driving your son to the hospital, I mean, in the back, very lethargic. And can you just talk about those first couple days, the symptoms that you and your kids were dealing with? And I'm hoping it's a little better now that for the last few weeks you've relocated.
Well, what happened was I in my older age, I recently had 2 children back to back. So I have a 1, a 2, and a 10-year-old son that's home at home with me still. My other 2 sons are grown and have ventured out. But I went home with hope, that things were going to be okay. Within 24 hours, my 1-year-old, and you know what it's like to look at those babies and they're brand new and unharmed, and he had no voice. And, within 5 or 6 days from that, my 2-year-old, I went to wake him up in the morning and there was just no life left in him. And when I put him on my shoulder, I could hear that he was struggling to breathe. So I called his grandmother and she immediately came up and we rushed him up to a local children's hospital here. And when we actually got into the back room, they wanted us both, me and my son, to take a decontamination shower before they would actually see us. And I'm sorry, my son is distracting me.
I love you.
Get out. Bye. Okay, bye. Love you. And being a mother, my oldest son is 24 years old, and 24 years of bringing my kids to the ERs, never once have I had to deal with that. And I said, why is that, ma'am? And they're like, well, you're just from East Palestine. I said, I don't feel comfortable. One, I will give, Jameson was not understanding what a decontamination shower was at that time, because he had not been bathed for, the past 5 or 6 days, because I was not bathing them in the water. And I'm sorry, basically what this was taking my 2-year-old son, putting him and spraying him down with a high-powered water system and dousing him in some type of chemical, maybe that they put on you before they do surgery. I don't know exactly what it was. And as his body stood there, he was nude, shaking like a leaf, crying for me. That is something that he never should have had to go through. And, that's how I don't understand how people want to go with this narrative that things are safe, when I know what me and my children went through for 4 weeks, 4 weeks of hell, 4 weeks of uncontrollable symptoms. And I even believe to this day that my children and me were harmed. We are still having, symptoms that come and go. We are out of the area, but I believe that we have developed some chloracne. My 10-year-old son is continuing to still have nosebleeds. I'll notice that the kids are breaking out with rashes here and there, but their father also works in East Palestine, is having to go back there daily. And after being out of that, when he comes home, I feel like he is almost contaminated. He'll come home and be sitting next to me for 2 hours and I'll get a sore throat. So I told him from now on, I want the clothes taken off at the door and they need to be washed immediately.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that with us, Candace. Again, I know that that's got to be difficult even now to continue to look back and talk about some of these things. You all have all been put through so much at this point, and the fact that everybody still is essentially at the mercy of Norfolk Southern to get any assistance here is absolutely outrageous.
Can I ask one last thing? Candace, not to get too political, but just an obvious question. I don't know. I don't think the majority of the country realizes that your governor has not issued a state of emergency almost 50 days later. He was, reelected overwhelmingly. He's pretty popular there, but for some reason he has not declared a state of emergency, which if he does declare a state of emergency, essentially the EPA would take over. Right now, the EPA is secondary to the company that poisoned you. If he declares the state of emergency, it would bring more federal resources. I think President Biden has done a terrible job. It's shameful he hasn't visited. But on your governor, who, whenever he talks, he seems to be trying to normalize this. He talks about, me and whatever his wife's name, we went to, watch the Lion King at the school, and we talked to the kids, and they're playing basketball, and everything's normal. I mean, what is his role in this? Because it does not seem he's doing what an obvious leader should be doing.
Well, Jordan, as far as I'm concerned, none of our leaders are doing what they should be doing. And if you have, say, even 1,000 residents that are having symptoms, I know a friend of mine that was recently just diagnosed 2 days ago at the clinic in town with chemical exposure. There are people crying out saying they are sick. We are being swept under the rug and forgotten because they want to go along with this narrative that everything is okay. And there are numerous people that are suffering, that are proof that things are not normal. And I'll go back to this. How can you even say that it's normal when we have not gotten test results? Because we were failed there too. Test results should have started day one. Soil samples didn't start till 2 weeks in after residents complained and moaned and complained. And we had to beg for them to test for dioxins. We had to literally beg. Why are residents of a small town having to beg government and local officials to test for dioxins? That's the EPA's job. I'm not a scientist. And if I wouldn't have done research on my own, I never would have known that dioxins could have been a byproduct of all this. But I had to become a scientist. I had to become a nurse. I had to put on multiple different roles since this, catastrophic event has happened in my hometown. And we are being failed, not only by Governor DeWine, by our local officials. Where is our mayor? Where is our city manager? He knows people are sick. They know people are begging, literally begging for help. Actually, we're going to have a peaceful protest tomorrow at noon going through the town, and we'll see the turnout. And hopefully that will give some people a reflection of things are not fine and things are not normal. If things were fine and normal, people would not be showing up at a protest begging for the mercy of Governor DeWine to call a state of an emergency so that these people can get the help that they need and deserve.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing up the protest as well. We'll definitely check in with you after that tomorrow. I'm definitely curious to hear how it goes. Candace, thank you so much again for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's continue to stay in touch. We'll see you again soon. I'm sure I'll definitely be making my way back out to East Palestine again in the next few weeks.
Thank you guys so much. And for any East Palestine resident watching, I beg you, out of an abundance of caution, please do not take your children to the Easter egg hunt. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much.
Thank you, Candace.
In all seriousness, I'm not being funny. We need a citizen's arrest in this country. Look at what's going on in France right now. They're burning down buildings over the President Macron proposing to increase the retirement age by 2 years. Obviously it's different here in France. They have basic protections as citizens like universal health care and other things. So they're a little bit more secure in protesting. But you have a community here. This is worse than just kind of abandoned. They've been left to die. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it because I don't want to scare people, but when you are chronically, Louis, you shared your experience.
Yeah.
You're there 2 weeks between two reporting trips.
Yep.
And this last one, you got to leave. You were having burning eyes, your throat hurt, and you put on your respirator and, went out of town to a hotel. For, however many thousands are left there, they can't do that. Right. So when you're chronically exposed, even if you're in an area where you're not smelling it, it doesn't mean you're not inhaling chemicals. You are, like you said, you're not going to get cancer right away, mm-hmm. but everything, you are slowly being, I think Bob Bocock said it at a press conference, they're being recontaminated every day.
Mhm.
And in a way, I'm not defending, the city officials that are putting on an Easter egg hunt. It's reckless, but there is no good answers here because those city officials also, they don't want people to be permanently in their homes. They don't want people to be permanently isolated. They want kind of an economy and people coming to the Easter egg hunt. I'm sure there might be vendors there and some local commerce because they need to feed their kids too. What should have happened and what would have happened, I think, in European countries or whatnot, and what would have happened in the Hamptons, what would have happened in name your wealthy
New York
wherever
City,
the governor lives,
Austin,
in
where I
Ohio.
live, wherever. Yeah.
They would have evacuated 4,500 people. They would have put them in nice hotels for a while until they actually cleaned it up. And I want to share real quick. I won't name who unless they want to come on and share their story. I got a call from a resident earlier this morning who shared to me that they just had a call with Norfolk Southern because the CEO infamously gave out his cell phone number. But when you call the number, you don't actually get him. You get a voicemail to call somebody else. So, and by the way, smash the like button, almost 400 people. We're the only ones still covering this, folks. So if you want news and information on a petrochemical mushroom cloud that detonated less than 50 days ago over 2 states, this is where you're going to get it. Anyway, this resident called the number. She got a Norfolk Southern person on the phone, wouldn't give his name, wouldn't give his title. She said, for what you are going to pay in keeping me and my kids at a hotel for the next 3 months, can you just pay off the rest of my mortgage, which I think was, I don't know, $30,000. So if you just pay off my mortgage, then we could start the process here of trying to move. And basically he laughed. He said he was laughing because somebody walked in and did something funny, but you don't laugh to a desperate person on the phone. This is someone from Norfolk Southern. When you call the CEO, you get a voicemail telling you to call this number. She called this number and she's getting laughed at. And then he gave her the go around and told her, yeah, we can't do that. And I said to her, well, even if you have presented to Norfolk Southern that for the amount you're paying on the hotel for me and my family, you could just pay off the loan at the same amount. They're not going to do it because they don't want to set the precedent of paying off your mortgage because then they got to do it for everybody else.
And I'll say too, so I actually put out a Twitter thread kind of on this topic the other day, talking about how much it would actually cost to, and I wasn't ever saying that every single house in East Palestine needs to be purchased by Norfolk Southern or by the federal government. But if you wanted to, just for the hypothetical, how much would it cost? And it ends up being roughly $270 million to buy every single home in East Palestine when you look at the number of homes times the average home sale value in the town. It's a little over 2,100 homes. And there's the average home sale price average home value as of January of this year before the derailment was $125,000. So if you do that math, you get somewhere around $270 million. And the amount of people who told me that I was Russian disinformation for even, talking about that to the residents there, even want this, blah, blah. I got all sorts of crazy stuff that I had not experienced before, which was interesting, number one. But
welcome to Russiagate.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was like, I feel like I told Steve Grumbine this the other day on the live stream. I was like, I think I finally made it when I've been called Russian disinformation. But I said, I was like, number one, I saw with my own eyes that this stuff is still happening. I could smell it with my own nose. I got the headache to prove it. I got I've seen this stuff firsthand. These folks are going through some real shit right now and nobody's talking about it anymore. And it is affecting their lives every single day. This happened by no fault of their own. The fact that they need to beg Norfolk Southern for help right now still is insane. They're literally, again, Candace had spent 23 hours over 3 days to beg for money to relocate her family for 2 weeks. Okay? That shouldn't need to happen. She told me at one point, she basically had to go in and cry to go do that, to go make that happen. So why are they needing to do that? Why hasn't the federal government set it up so that, okay, you can do these things, the federal government will deal with it now, and then the federal government can get reimbursed by Norfolk Southern later. But to get back to the home value thing, for the very first time, actually, in the U.S. Senate hearing, that happened just a couple of days ago. First off, it was the first time that an actual East Palestine resident was able to testify in front of the Senate. During the hearing before that, there were no residents able to testify, which is outrageous. But a resident was able to testify. And to his credit, actually, although I disagree with him on basically everything else, Ted Cruz is the first official that I have seen actually bring that point up and ask the resident directly, has Norfolk Southern or the federal government or anybody said anything to you about, making up the difference in your home value if you try to sell your house and you can't sell it? And she told him, like, no, clearly they haven't said that. Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate the compliment. They haven't seen that happen before. And Ted Cruz, we'll see if he follows through with it, or if anyone follows through.
Very doubtful.
Yep. But that actually did happen for the first time that, okay, the discussion has been brought up. Not a single other person mentioned it after that in this hearing, but that needs to be a conversation that actually happens here. This town is still not normal. It's been 7 weeks at this point. We had Dr. Welton today in town, and we can play this clip if we want to. Actually in Sulphur Run today, Colin, I don't know if we have the tweet from Dr. Welton. He was in Sulphur Run today. Yep, this one. And he was using a PID. And is there a video there, Colin? I don't remember if that's a... yeah, you can play that just for a second. It's short. But he's doing a test with a PID device there. This is right in Sulphur Run. So Sulphur Run is actually right behind resident Chrissy Ferguson, who we had on last week at one point. I did interviews with her in person. She says that the CTEH, the testing company, essentially falsified the results of her in-home test. I've got every reason to believe her at this point. But Dr. Welton is doing tests in Sulphur Run behind, not necessarily behind her house. I'm trying to get confirmation on where specifically that was, but very close proximity to her house, and getting readings of over 2 parts per million when measuring for what I believe he's measuring for is VOCs. 2 parts per million of VOCs might not sound like a lot, but at most any test that we've seen so far in a home test result has been at 0.1 or maybe 0.2. But oftentimes these devices that are being used, they're doing very quick tests. In a lot of cases, they're not testing for the right things. So to have this high level of VOC testing being done, granted very close to the creek, but these creeks run right through the town. That should be setting off major alarm bells. Again, 49 days later, you're still getting results that are much higher than they should be at this case. I don't know. The conversation of allowing these people to leave more permanently needs to be happening, and it's frankly, it's mostly not.
And Colin, can we play? I don't know if you have the clip. We posted it this morning, so for those that haven't clicked on it, please click on it so we could help. The more people that click, YouTube recommends it more. But you covered a Pennsylvania hearing while you were in East Palestine, because again, Pennsylvania, like one of the residents told you, has been left out of the response.
Yes.
It basically, the derailment site was, I think, 648 feet away from one of the families you spoke to. They had the smoke and the plume over their home. But this politician, local state representative, I think what she said was really illuminating. Abigail, I forget her last name. It'll be up on the screen. People can see. But let's play this clip.
I have dealt with Norfolk Southern in my capacity as Borough Council President, and I was told in no uncertain terms by multiple different Pennsylvania departments, I've heard from DCED, from PUC, from PennDOT, that we've given away our power to do anything about these railroads. And when it was mentioned earlier that the quote from Norfolk Southern was, "We have over 200 years of experience," I was told we gave away our rights 200 years ago, actually was the quote that I was told in trying to deal with Norfolk Southern from a local government perspective. I was very struck and shocked and a little bit horrified earlier when it was mentioned that we have Department of Environmental Protection, we have emergency management, we have all of these different layers of things working together, focusing on statistical models, et cetera. But ultimately, it sounds as if the decision about what to do was just made by Norfolk Southern. And have we just given away our rights to do anything about these railroads that go through our communities? My law office, where I'm a sole practitioner, is across the street from a Norfolk Southern train track. If we have a derailment, I'll die that moment. So I'm very concerned that we have given away our power to do anything about these derailments. Is there anything that local government can do? Is there anything that we as state government can do to take back some of that power? What is the command structure such that it was just allowed to, a decision to burn 5 cars worth of very terrifying materials to the average person? I'm not a scientist, but these things are terrifying to the average person. What kind of command structure is there, and what can we put in place, if anything, as legislators, to take back some of that power so that you don't have very educated, smart people looking at statistical models, but ultimately saying, okay, Norfolk Southern, if you want to burn your train cars full of stuff, I guess it's up to you.
I mean, she got a big applause in the room there after that. You started to hear it right there too. Because again, to your point, Pennsylvania fully left out of the discussion for the vast majority of everything going on here. And that was a big thing that was illuminated during that hearing, as well as a resident who lives in just outside of Darlington, Pennsylvania, Ashley Bennett. We've posted an interview with her on the channel as well. And she really talks quite a bit about this, that they...
Wait a minute.
To my understanding, there's 20 families in that 1 mile radius, and that's all they're doing. So I went back down there again this week with my receipts from my bedding and my pillows and my cleaning supplies and my furnace filters. And Will Burgess of Norfolk Southern's claim department denied them. He said, if I pay yours, I'm going to have to pay everybody's, even with pictures, even with proof that this is what you did to my property.
Right.
Would not pay them. So that really, not everybody has a savings account that they can pull from to replace things. And Norfolk Southern has racked up my credit card with stuff that I had to do to my house to clean, and they should be paying.
Right. And you're not the only one too. I mean, we're talking to folks every day who it's not a couple of folks, it's most folks that I talk to are in a situation where it's like, yeah, the night of the initial derailment, we could pay for the hotel for the first night. But it wasn't an option for us after that. So we went back and we stayed there until they made us leave again for the controlled burn. They used the hotel voucher that they could, if they could get relocation for a little bit after that, they took it. But then when it runs out, you're back in your house.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, people right now are some of them are staying in their houses uncomfortable, some of them with kids, many of them with kids, and they're wondering, what can I do? It's
a sad situation. There's a lot of people that didn't have the funds or the means to even leave. We were misguided from the beginning. I spoke with when Pennsylvania set up their little informational thing at Darlington Township. I went in there and spoke to the guy. I asked them, I said, you guys evacuated, the government, our superintendent said, the government called and said, they drew out a 12 to 15 mile line and our school district was in the path to evacuate. So they evacuated. I said, why didn't you evacuate the rest of the residents? And his answer was, it was transportationally unfeasible to evacuate because people on oxygen or people in wheelchairs. I said, so you left us there to breathe in these toxins to be poisoned. I told him, shame on you. That wasn't your right.
Yeah, I mean, again, this happened a couple hundred feet from Pennsylvania. So if the train was driving across the state of Ohio from west to east, if it had gone 600 feet more, this would have all happened, and the town we would all be talking mostly about would be Darlington, Pennsylvania. That has most people are not familiar with Darlington, Pennsylvania. The media has not talked about Darlington, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding towns there. These folks had no clue what was happening for the most part. Eventually, they did get some emergency alert things on their phone. A woman at one point I spoke to had some screenshots of this, but it said if you're basically the 1 to 2 mile radius was all they got. I have photos from people 7 miles away who you can see the plume and it's basically descending on their home on a hill. The residents like Ashley had this thing coming through and they have no clue what to do. Their schools were evacuated, as she said. Later in that interview, she told me the schools didn't have any testing or anything done in them before they just reopened. The school wasn't like fully disinfected with actual, anything to make sure that the school was safe for the kids. Nobody went to go check on these things. So while there's also been plenty of that in Ohio that hasn't been dealt with and things haven't been done the right way and haven't been tested for, it's even worse in a lot of cases over in Pennsylvania. And a lot of the resources of at least being able to reach out to Norfolk Southern isn't there for most families in Pennsylvania. It's not there enough for folks in Ohio, but Pennsylvania has really been left out of the fold here.
And welcome, new Status Coup member, Susan just signed up. I want to make a point and then a plea because I got to run out. I'm going to a wedding, but Louis, don't go anywhere. Louis is going to be taking your phone calls. So if you have a call on East Palestine primarily, and then Zaina is going to be joining. So we're just getting started. Also, we have some other clips we want to show you. But why I think this is so important, because if you notice, we've been covering this a lot and we've been growing as a result because there's a huge hunger in this cesspool of a corrupt country to not normalize what is abnormal. Let me repeat, to not normalize what is abnormal. It is not normal if an accident happens, accident in air quotes, for the people who are the victims to basically have to deal with it themselves. It's not normal, whether it be mass shootings or name your calamity, for the media to cover it, in the case of mass shootings these days, for a few days and then move on. In the case of a chemical bomb going off, cover it for a week and then abandon it. That's not normal. It would not happen in other countries with a less corrupt media system. And one of my, I don't want to say regrets, but one of my wishes in my career is I started on camera and like traveling as a reporter at the end of 2015. I truly wish it would have worked out that I had started a year or so earlier, because then I would have been able to cover Flint when it was actually happening in the beginning. When I started covering Flint, all the cameras had left, but that, the calamity in Flint started in 2014. I started doing this and traveling at the end of 2015. Not that I am delusional or think of myself so highly that I could have rescued Flint. Of course not. But at the very least, I wish I could have covered it in the beginning when the residents were dealing with what the residents in East Palestine are dealing with now. The only difference in Flint, there wasn't a bomb that went off. It was basically covered up for 18 months. I wish I could have helped lift their voices. And that's what we're trying to do. And Louis has been doing an incredible job. If you ask me, deserves every award in the book, because not that we can rescue East Palestine or, hopefully we could help put some folks in jail. But at the very least, we can keep this in the news, keep pointing out that this is not normal, keep breaking little news here and there. I mean, it is a relevant news story that they're having an Easter egg hunt. Colin, if you have the thumbnail, because it's just so fucking troubling to look at. I mean, look at this. I mean, those are just generic kids. I don't know if they're from East Palestine, but they're literally going to be hunting for Easter eggs a few weeks after that. You think that's safe? What is this, a country or an experiment? I mean, it's insane. Can you imagine letting your kids go there a year later, let alone a couple weeks? So I'm asking you because, frankly, it's expensive. We've sent Louis there twice. At this point, between two trips, as well as the other places we go, we're talking 10 grand it's cost. I'm going to Flint in a few weeks. I don't want East Palestine to turn into Flint. I don't want 9 years from now. Next month is 9 years into the ongoing, keyword, ongoing Flint water crisis. I don't want Louis to be the only reporter that goes to East Palestine 9 years later because people stopped covering it years earlier, which is the case in Flint. I'd be shocked if there is a national reporter in Flint. I don't want to go into details, but I was approached by a filmmaker a couple weeks ago, and who's interested in doing a documentary on Flint. And I've basically been talking to him and giving him as much information as he can. And this is a filmmaker that's had a lot of successful films, even on networks like CNN. And I've given him all the information. I've connected him with some sources that he might be able to feature in the documentary. And he keeps asking me the same exact question. How can I sell it to networks if I can't answer why does this still matter? Because he knows why it still matters. And I know why it still matters. But how do I convince a bunch of cosmopolitan executives at major networks, why does this still matter 9 years later? First of all, I'm not criticizing him, but think of how sick that mentality is. Why does this still matter? Well, look it up. Flint right now is one of the worst cancer clusters in America. Why do you think that is? Because of the weather or because of the water? Then he asked me, what can still be done? That's another thing that he has to sell to the networks to convince them to sign on. Unfortunately, in the case of Flint, I don't want to go too in the weeds.
Right.
Not a lot. The statute of limitations has ran out on most of the crimes. The current attorney general in Michigan fucked up the criminal investigation so bad that I don't really know how much more can be done. On my end, the only thing that can be done is continuing to go back there, continuing to shine a spotlight. But why I'm saying all this is I don't want East Palestine to turn into Flint. It's a different situation, but the same principle. Human beings, in the case of Flint, poor black people and poor white people. In the case of East Palestine, mostly low-income, poor white people, have basically become sacrificial lambs and are being abandoned. And for us, at a certain point, it's not going to be in the news anymore. It already isn't in the news. At a certain point, our videos will get less views than they are now on East Palestine. At a certain point, we'll be sending Louis there, and we won't be getting a ton of member signups as that, but we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And that's why you should get into journalism, to lift people's voices that are not being spotlighted elsewhere, to try and help deliver whatever justice we could deliver through facts. And I just ask you, we got 400 people watching. We're asking you to sign up as members, not so like Louis could move to a palace, not so I could go to the casino, but because it costs a lot of money to do this. I mean, Colin, come on for a second. Even if you're not on camera. Did he go to the bathroom? Okay.
Yeah, yep.
We're talking about getting another live view, right? Another live view.
Yeah.
Live view is our broadcasting unit. It took us a while. At first, we bought $1,000 live view, which helped us go live on the road, but it's the lowest price product that they have. And if there's a shit ton of people, it wasn't working. The connection sucked. So we saved up, GoFundMe, membership, and we got top of the line live view, $26,000 that allows us to go on the road. And for the most part, we have good connection and we could go live from places. But we need another one because we want to be able to cover more. We want to be able to cover more live events and more stories. And I don't want to mail a $26,000 live view all around the country. How much is a new live view? Not the top of the line, second to next. We're talking what, 10 to 15 grand?
Yeah, somewhere between 10 and 15 grand is when I last, yeah.
And that's before we get to the monthly costs because you have to pay for data and all this other shit they throw at you. So the point is, there's a lot of costs that go into doing this beyond just one trip. It's the broadcasting equipment, the insurance, hotels, flights, rent-a-cars. Not to get into detail, but we'd love Louis to be able to do more. Got to pay Louis, Zaina. So there's a lot of outlets begging you for money. And what are they doing, really? They're just bloviating about bullshit and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and what's woke and whatever. God bless them. We're asking you $5 to $10 a month, statuscoup.com/join. If you haven't signed up yet, consider signing up today because that you don't realize it, but every $5 membership, every $10 membership, we have members that are a little higher, helps A, fund the trips, but B, we don't have to hesitate. We don't have to think, we can't really send this person here because we're planning on sending this person here and we can't afford both. Mm-hmm. So if it's within your means, if you don't have $5 to $10 a month, that's fine. But if it is within your means, I believe talk is cheap. We're walking the walk. Louis has been there twice. We're already talking about sending him a third time. If you notice, he's been there generally for 4 or 5 days. If we could grow, we could keep people places longer. down the road, we might even want to do some short form documentaries, which require a little bit longer on the ground. I could go on and be on my soapbox, but Louis, I think you feel similar to me because you're seeing the same kind of injustice that I've seen in Flint.
Definitely. And I noticed we just got a new member as you were saying that. Thank you, Dale Jensen, new member. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dale.
We appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, when I was on the ground, both times I was there, the first time, we'll talk about that first. The regular media who were in town were there essentially just parroting what they were hearing from officials. So one clear example, the health clinic, when it was initially opened, after I ran into the governor, who I guess we'll start there. On the very first
bringing Zaina on.
How we doing, Zaina?
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. So on the first trip, when I get into East Palestine, we're there for a couple days at this point. I've basically on that trip had interviewed as many people as I could every single day with John Farina, who was with me. And we basically, from first thing in the morning when we woke up until late at night, we're either interviewing people or trying to get stuff uploaded so that we could get it all out to you all so you can see it. On day 2 or day 3, a resident that I had spent a lot of time talking with the day before sends me a text message. The governor is on my street right now, and nobody's asking him any questions. So fortunately, we were only a couple blocks away. We rushed over there, literally ran out of the car. Sure enough, governor's right there. There are 4 or 5 other reporters standing there with cameramen, just standing there looking at the guy, not saying a single word. So I went up and I asked him a couple questions because that's what you're supposed to do as a journalist. And in that clip, he lies to my face after trying to dodge a question, tells people that they need to go to the clinic in town. So first off, we get the governor lying right there, which was, at this point, not a surprise to me. I didn't know as much about DeWine as I do at this point, weeks later. So we go to the health clinic that he tells people that they should go to if they're feeling sick, because the street that he was on was filled with people who were getting sick. The railroad tracks were in their backyard. So we go to this health clinic. There are other media there, essentially reading almost a cut and paste version of a press release that says, this clinic that is here set up by the state of Ohio just opened today. If you're feeling symptoms, you should come here and you'll get some help. Well, if you look into what that clinic was actually providing, it was very notable that the most important thing was what they weren't providing. They were providing, number one, 0 testing of any kind. No blood testing, no urine testing. How are you supposed to know you're exposed to any of these chemicals if you're not getting a test done? They're providing 0 prescriptions of any kind to treat anything. They're providing 0 diagnosis of any kind. They were doing essentially nothing to help your situation at that time. The only thing that they were providing were referrals and, somebody to talk to, a listening ear. What good that's going to do people. I mean, a listening ear is great, but they need physical help for their physical symptoms that they're having right then and then. The local media and the other media who were there were essentially just saying, Governor DeWine is, opened up this clinic today. If you're feeling sick, go here and they'll make sure they take care of you.
Oh,
I stood out.
Come to find out, Norfolk Southern and other companies have done this before, where they've opened up health clinics to get, psychological not necessarily psychological evaluations, but where you can talk to therapists. And then
Right.
they've documented this so that it's actually an effort to be able to track people and track sentiments, so that then they can then go and make PR decisions around the way that people feel, and instead of actually addressing their health symptoms.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all at this point. Yeah, that's outrageous. And folks are also getting gaslit at this place, being told, oh, you're getting a rash, and so is half of your town. Oh, it must be the stress. It's the stress. Has nothing to do with the chemical explosion that happened a couple blocks away. Anyway, the point is
can I just compliment with the rash discussion? I just want to show this quick clip.
Mm-hmm. I believe you talked with Jordan a little bit about a friend of yours who's been getting some rashes and whatnot too. So you have several folks that who are starting to experience this now. And I know I spoke with a lot of folks getting rashes. I guess, is that something that's still prevalent today? We're now basically almost 5 weeks away, 5 weeks out from when this happened, and that's still prevalent.
It seems like it's getting worse too. So even the nosebleeds and everything is getting worse as well. Or more people are noticing it, and especially with them tearing up everything right now. You can kind of hear it in the background. They're moving the dirt around earlier when it wasn't snowing, it wasn't as cold. I was starting to have the burning nose just riding in my car down the street.
Right. Fortunately, it's like a little bit windy right now, and I think it's coming from not necessarily the right direction. So we're okay for the moment, at least. But yeah, definitely. I mean, you can hear. I don't know if the audio will pick it up, but you can take my word for it too. We can hear the construction vehicles moving back and forth, not far away from where we're at right now.
And that woman, Kristen, she's on city water, which again, they've declared if you're on the city's water, everything's fine. Those are not rashes; those are chemical burns. I've seen them, and that was I think 2 weeks ago. She's also had to take her son to the emergency room for nosebleeds. So this is not stuff happening years ago. This is stuff happening right now.
No, it is. And again, unfortunately, when there were media in town, a lot of them were not asking some of those questions, getting specific into what was actually being provided and what is not. Again, to date, the only actual help that these folks are getting, financially or otherwise, basically, is almost directly just from Norfolk Southern. If you want relocation money, you still have to beg Norfolk Southern for the money. That doesn't make that blows my mind that is how this is set up to work. You have to go beg the company that caused all of these problems to then come help you. What is the point of having a government involved here if they're not going to be the ones to try to make this right for you? Norfolk Southern should be the ones who have to pay for this sort of stuff, but these people shouldn't have to deal directly with Norfolk Southern. You know what I mean? There needs to be a level of separation there involved. The federal government should be the ones, or somebody, the state government, whoever it may be, needs to step up and be the ones to decide what is worthy of, reimbursal money or all of this stuff, not the company at fault. These people are needing to prove to Norfolk Southern, why they should be getting this money, essentially. That's what's happening in the assistance center. These people are going in needing to prove that the damages that they're asking for money for, not even damages at this point, that's the wrong word, the reimbursements they need for going to stay at the hotel, the things that have been destroyed. A lot of people who lived really close by have issues with their homes and furniture and clothing and all this sort of stuff. They need to go beg Norfolk Southern for it, which is absolutely wrong. I want to bring up, I just noticed a comment in here.
I gotta run because I gotta go to a wedding. You're in good hands with Zaina and Louis. And by the way, please sign up as a member. We've gotten 4 signups. We need a whole lot more than that. Like I said, we don't talk. We're walking the walk. And by the way, to my conservative friends, hey, if you're so worried about kids going to drag shows, what about going to toxic Easter egg shows, huh? Let's have some consistency. If we're worried about kids, what they're taught in school, going to certain shows, then I hope you're worried about kids' safety in East Palestine. Let's care about our kids across the board. With that, I bid you adieu. Thank you both.
Thanks, Jordan. Zaina, just to catch you up on some of this stuff too, and then I'll be able to tie in this comment from Stella Gamble, who's actually a resident from East Palestine that I've talked to a handful of times. Jordan's had her on as well. All of this is tying back into the Easter egg hunt that is scheduled to be happening in East Palestine, not this weekend, but next weekend, I believe, if I'm doing my numbers correct. About Easter weekend. Again, there's been no soil testing done inside of this park to prove that the park is clean. While I was at the city council meeting about a week and a half ago at this point, the council seemed concerned about the park being potentially contaminated, given the fact that the city manager determined that they were going to close the playground temporarily while it was cleaned, and all of the mulch was to be removed and replaced. That seems like a drastic step, probably the right step, right? That they're going ahead and doing this, but that would lead me to believe that there is some concern about the park being contaminated. They also brought up the fact that they were going to be cleaning the tennis courts, which again, another step that should be taken, but cause for concern that something is going on here. There was zero specifics about how these things were cleaned, which is a red flag for me when I broke the story a couple weeks ago that cleaners who were coming in doing residential home cleanings provided by Norfolk Southern were not hazmat cleaners. They weren't doing anything to clean chemicals in homes. We don't know the specifics of how the playground was cleaned or the tennis courts were cleaned. They have this Easter egg hunt they're talking about doing. There's still aerators going on in a contaminated creek at the entrance to the park, where they're literally spraying water in the air, separating chemicals, launching them up into the air, basically. at the entrance to the park where folks would be going into here. And I received a text message after talking on the phone with resident Stella Gamble this morning that even the tennis team in East Palestine isn't playing at those tennis courts right now. Still, they're practicing in Columbiana, a couple towns over, where we actually stayed while we were here. And Stella actually left this comment here. We tried to get her on earlier, but she was traveling. So thank you for watching. Now that you're back, Stella, cleaning the playground and pool while toxic water sprays at the entrance and toxic soil is being loaded and blowing everywhere. Why can't it wait? The soil hasn't even been tested. That's the similar sentiment that we heard from Candace earlier this morning. Stella saying the same thing here. She's been raising the alarm about kids involved with all of this since the very beginning of this in our initial interview that we did. It's absolutely insane to me that the way that this is being handled, and that an Easter egg hunt in East Palestine is even being considered at this point.
I don't know why would they have it in the park that's within the 1 mile radius?
Yeah.
That's what makes no sense to me. I mean, because if you think about it, they've created this 1 mile radius. They're going to have an Easter egg. Do we know who scheduled? Was it the city? It's the Park Foundation. I'm a little unclear on the specifics here. And to be clear for folks too, I did reach out earlier this morning to the mayor's office as well as the head of the Parks and Rec department. I have yet to hear back. I'm hopeful that we will potentially get a response. If we do, we'll obviously add that into the story. And for folks who haven't actually read the story, I did publish a piece on the Status Coup Substack. That is statuscoup.substack.com. You should check that out after this. And it gives some more of the details here that you can check out. And it looks like, Colin, actually, do you want to pull it up for a second just so folks can see it? We are publishing a lot more on Status Coup's Substack here. So I won't read the whole thing here, but why are kids being allowed to go on toxic Easter egg hunt in East Palestine? We've got some additional quotes from different residents, as well as talking about some of the reactions from folks who live there, talking about how dangerous this is, given the fact that dioxins have been found in soil samples, not at the park, but in soil that was taken away from the ground zero area. The fact that we're holding off on doing any of these soil tests in the park, or we haven't seen any of these soil tests from the park, is egregious at this point to be able to do it. So yeah, if you want to check that out, as well as, Jordan published a great piece on Substack the other day. Zane has been working hard on publishing a lot there as well. That's another free place that you can go and continue. Yeah, I'll be this weekend. I'm working on several pieces that are covering the anti-LGBTQ legislation, the legislation that's attacking our civil liberties. In Florida, for instance, and we did a piece on this yesterday, they are literally, kids can be kidnapped, brought across the border, brought into Florida. And in Florida, they have immunity as long as the person who brings the kids in is making the claim that the kids were being, manipulated. Their gender was being manipulated in the legislation. So literally, like in a domestic violence situation, ex-husband or something can then take the kids to Florida and say that their, ex was manipulating the child in this way, and they'll have immunity in the state. So there's a lot of really, really insane legislation. And the thing is, I know Jordan mentioned this earlier, but 80% of conservatives are against this legislation. So most people don't want it. Right. We do need to take care of the kids in East Palestine. We need to take care of the kids across the country. We need to take care. So I'll be covering a lot of this state legislation that's happening, the things like the book bannings, like a bunch of this craziness that's going on. So you guys can check that out.
That's great and super important too. I mean, I live in Texas, and we're seeing a lot of that similar legislation being debated here. I know there's similar debates even yesterday. I'm not familiar with all of the specifics, so I won't talk much about it here. But I know in state houses across the country, there are all sorts of crazy debates happening at the moment that are frankly underreported. So that's great to hear that Zane is going to be looking into a lot of that stuff going on. I want to stick on East Palestine just a little bit more here. Jordan and I talked a little bit about home values and essentially trying to bridge the gap between folks who are trying to sell their home, haven't been able to yet, And I'd like to actually give a little bit of credit to Senator Ted Cruz here. I disagree with him on most things, but he is the first U.S. Senator or House of Representative that I have heard talk about this at all. Colin, I believe we have that clip. We can play that. There's actually a resident from East Palestine who was testifying. So this is a conversation between an East Palestine resident and Ted Cruz about home values, and then we can discuss that on the other side.
That's interesting.
One of the things you testified about is the concerns about the drop in home values. And I can understand that being a very real concern. You mentioned you've done work as a market researcher. Are there any data that are actually quantifying what the loss in home values has been? And if so, at this point, are the residents being offered any compensation? Is Norfolk Southern offering to make residents whole for the loss in home values? If a family decides that they want to move, are families able to sell their homes? Are there any buyers? Or, I mean, one of the things you said powerfully is even if we want to leave, we can't leave. Is there any relief being offered now to say, if you make the decision to move your home and to move your family somewhere else, there is an avenue for you to sell your home and get a fair market price for it?
The short answer is, as of today, no. There is not clear-cut explanation or parameters of how you would do that. We've heard time and time again from Norfolk Southern that they're going to make it right and that they're looking into some long-term healthcare monitoring and assistance and home value protection, but details of that plan have not been disclosed to residents as of today.
I would encourage for you to let this committee know as it goes forward, if there are residents who are looking to move and can't sell their homes, this committee is very interested in making sure that the community of East Palestine is treated fairly and that what you're going through, you receive what is just. And so I would invite you to provide this committee with the specifics so that we can expedite and facilitate making it right.
And I mean, he doesn't go too crazy or anything there, but literally that's the only question about that to this East Palestine resident. I'm blanking on her name right now. But in that hearing at one point, like, again, the East Palestine resident is up there. She was in the first group of people to testify, and they almost moved on without any questions to this resident. They were like, okay, let's get on to the next panel with Alan Shaw on it. And they were kind of like moving along. And fortunately, again, not a fan politically, but that's okay if he's gonna, make a stand for this. I'm all in support of it. Ted Cruz and then another senator asked a couple questions of the resident. Her last name was Allison, Miss Allison, to be able to get some insight here. And another question that he had asked, and we won't play the clip for this one, was essentially like, how has the response been so far from the federal government, from the state government, and from Norfolk Southern? And she, went on and said, I've got testimony here from 50 residents. I'd like to submit them into the record. But in general, it feels like residents of East Palestine are getting breadcrumbs from Norfolk Southern. So, yeah.
And the thing is these people are trapped, right? I mean, these people feel trapped. Like, they can't sell their homes and move right now because who's going to buy them and move into East Palestine? So a lot of homeowners have said, how am I going to do this? Other people have lost their jobs over this, over having to relocate and having to miss work, because a lot of people drive out of town to go to work, but then they had to be relocated. So going, from hotels to work to, they'd miss days trying to figure out how to navigate for their families. And, we have people sending kids to school still within that 1 mile radius because they have to. I mean, they have no other choice. So kids are, we're thinking about this Easter egg hunt on the playground, and that made me think, well, they're letting kids play outside at the schools right now. And they're not doing regular testing on the soil and air there to make sure that it's safe.
Right.
Are they going to do testing on the school, on the park before they have this event? I mean, that should be something that they should be doing anytime they're bringing people out to an area within this 1 mile radius, you would think.
Right. And again, it's like the soil, there has been soil testing results at the school, to my knowledge, hasn't been done. Definitely at the park hasn't been done. Or if they've been done, there's been no information about them, and none of it has been released to the public. So, I would feel much better with this if they were saying, hey, tentative date for Easter egg hunt at the city park. We're going to get the test results on this day. As long as the test results are fine, we're having it at the park. If we're not getting the test results, like that would be like a calculated, smarter way to do it, right? I would be less critical of the decision if that were how it would be being.
That's
laid
basic
out.
common sense, you would think. And you would think the
Right.
EPA would step in and be monitoring things like events that are happening, places where people are going to mass gather, and say, let's come in and let's make sure we get the testing done.
Right.
Let's hold Norfolk accountable, or, bring in third-party testing so that we can get it tested before we have an event somewhere where children especially are going to be present. But at that point, anyone, children or adults, you know.
I want to get to one more clip that I believe we have here, and then I think we're set up to try to take a couple calls from folks watching to talk about East Palestine. Colin, I believe we've got a clip from Russell that we can play. Russell, for folks who don't know, he was actually staying in the hotel that I was. He'd been able to relocate for a little bit, not by the thanks of Norfolk Southern, but by his home house insurance. It covered a hotel for, I believe they said, a week and a half or something like that. But unfortunately, Russell is stuck going back into work every single day, basically a stone's throw from ground zero. Russell has experienced all sorts of terrible symptoms as a result of this, and still is to this day. His skin, he describes it as like feeling like he's on fire sometimes. It's all very red, his skin, and it's not normal. I talked to his wife about this, and she was like, look at him. He looks like a lobster when he gets home from work, essentially. That's not how he was before this. He is constantly blowing all sorts of bloody whatever out of his nose at this point. He's had sore throats. He's felt exhausted and tired. I mean, it's just another example of folks. It's like, okay, even if you are able to get some of the relocation money to stay in a hotel, a lot of these folks have jobs in East Palestine, and they can't just quit their job. They don't have the financial cushion to be able to just quit their job and move on from this. Again, this is a town where the median income is for an individual is roughly $28,000. For a household, it's maybe $40,000. So it's not like these folks have lots of expendable income to be able to just pick up and leave on their own. Colin, you can go ahead and play this clip with Russell.
Say, you know what, you're pissing me off with the way you're handling the situation. And you're pissing me off the way you're handling the situation. This is my family, not yours. It's that simple. I don't care if you came here and drank the damn water. You spit it back in a damn glass and you took your ass back to your $1 million home. Where are you at now? Where are we at? We're living in it. We're washing in it. You're not, and you wouldn't. Don't tell me you think your family's safe here. We're contaminated. We will be for the rest of our lives. A lot of stuff that nobody's looking at. I'm a professional. I've been doing the same thing since I met my wife. I'm a maintenance man, a millwright, whatever you want to call it. If it's broke, I can fix it. I can figure out a way to fix it. I'm contaminated, okay? So for me to find another job, thank God I have an employer right now. For me to find another job somewhere doing what I do, when I walk into a company, they give me the keys to their building, no matter what it is. It's a manufacturing company, no matter what it is. I'm the maintenance guy. Something happens, I have to fix it. I got to get called out. I got to fix it. I got to be able to get into that room at any given time. So would you hire somebody that has a potential of 5 to 7 years, and then they're going to have liver cancer, any number of things that we don't even know about yet, and you're just going to hand your keys to your company over to that gentleman, knowing you're investing in that person at that time because of his knowledge and how he's going to help you and help your business to stay afloat? Would you do it?
Right. I mean, that's
taking the possibility that you're going to lose this employee and have to do this again in 5 to 7 years?
Right.
No.
Yeah. No, you're right.
People and professionals don't do that, and they won't do that. They look at the long haul of things.
Yes, I mean, the beginning of that is very powerful where, Russell's calling out a lot of these officials that are unfortunately leaving these folks high and dry. These folks feel abandoned and stuck in this situation here. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he's having health issues right now, can't get it addressed. It should be paid for by Norfolk Southern, or we should have some kind of health care helping these people, helping anyone that's sick, but helping these people right now that are going through this in East Palestine. And a lot of people don't have anywhere to go, and their insurance, they're not sure, what it's going to cover, what it's not. And one of the craziest things that I've been, hearing from the people that you interviewed, was when they were talking about how hospitals were hesitant and doctors were hesitant to diagnose what they were actually seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was extremely alarming. They're like, wait, we're waiting to hear from Norfolk, or we're waiting to hear from, the CDC or whatever to determine how we can diagnose you. But it's like, if you're seeing
right,
and even wouldn't you just diagnose what you're seeing?
Yep. And even to determine, I think some of the issues that they're running into too is like the hospitals don't necessarily know what to test for. They're like, yeah, can you test for these things? And it's like, well, we're not getting guidance on what we should be testing you for. And now, like, some of that information should be more prevalent. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but I've consulted many experts on this at this point. And, you're probably not going to find vinyl chloride in a test of any of these people, but you're very likely going to find potentially some of the byproducts. You might find dioxin, which we've had that conversation today quite a bit. You might find things like formaldehyde, hydrogen chloride, phosgene, which are all byproducts of vinyl chloride when they are set on fire. So these are things that you could potentially be finding that aren't being tested for. At this point, I think we probably want to start to try to take a couple calls from folks. This is my first time doing this, so you'll all have to bear with me. I do have everything set up here, and I'm
wondering if there's
going to
be a problem with having two people on, because I know we had that problem before. Colin, I don't know if we'll have that problem today.
He said that might be the case. Let me try getting it.
Yes, if it's two people, then this person who's not Lewis won't be able to, or the people on the phone won't be able to hear the second person talking.
Okay, gotcha. So you'll be able to hear Zaina, but you wouldn't be able to respond back. Up to you if you want to stick around. I do have it set up already. So if you want to stick around, all good. If you don't, I understand, because you won't be able to respond to folks.
I may dip out just so that it doesn't mess it up, because last time it kept messing it up, and I don't want you to have to deal with that. Because did. We were kind of going through that, right, Colin, where we couldn't really hear the caller, and then you couldn't hear me, and then like the caller was having to adjust. So I just don't want us to have to deal with that just because there's two people on.
That's fine. Well, parting thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
If you need me to come on and close out, let me know. Parting thoughts are: sign up to be a member, sign up to support Status Coup. Lewis has been doing amazing work, as you guys have seen, in East Palestine, on the ground, covering what's happening there, as the mainstream media has left. As they may be having these meetings where they're grilling people at Congress, for instance, and they're bringing on Alan Shaw. But we've seen this happen before, and the ball still continue to be dropped. So it's important to keep the pressure on, and to keep reporting, and to keep following up, because we know that a lot of things that happen, they'll do all the pageantry, in the beginning. They'll say, oh, we're going to clean up all the pipes in Flint. We're going to completely redo the water distribution centers. They never did. Years have passed. 6 years have passed. Nothing is done. And so, you have to stay on it and sign up so that you can get updates. It also helps to support us financially so that we can continue to do this work, continue to stay on the East Palestine story, and others. Folks have been sending in information about things that are happening in their communities: pollution, corporate corruption, other issues that may not be quite as broad sweeping as East Palestine, but is still impacting people's lives. So we would like to be able to cover those as well. Support us at statuscoup.com/join. And sign up, come join. And thank you so much, Lewis. And I'm sorry that I'm dipping out so quick, but I want to make sure that this runs properly and I'm not causing problems.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Zaina. Appreciate you coming on and joining me for a bit here. Appreciate it.
All right,
Colin, I believe I'm all set up here on my end. if correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we want to put up the phone number so folks can start calling in. Folks, if you've got questions, feel free to call the number right down below, 719-782-8871. And we can talk about all things East Palestine. We can talk about the Easter egg hunt scheduled for today. And we will see how this goes here. This is my first time doing this, so bear with me as we get this going. But yeah, feel free to call in. Again, we've got an Easter egg hunt coming up in East Palestine in the city park, where there is definitely a concern for potential contamination based on the fact that the council had made the decision to go in and close the playground, at least temporarily, for the playground to all be cleaned and disinfected, for all of the mulch at the playground to be removed and replaced with new mulch, and all of this to be put in. So there's definitely a concern there of things being contaminated. They are going ahead in and doing some of this cleaning, but the track record of cleaning during this whole debacle so far has been not great at best here. You've got a cleaning company that had been brought in to clean residential homes. I broke this story weeks ago at this point. The company called Stand Effect was hired by Norfolk Southern to come in and do these home cleanings, and they weren't hazmat certified. They were using germ cleaner, spraying it on top of chemicals to be able to go ahead and try to clean it. You can't spray germ cleaners on top of chemicals and have them disappear. Folks, if anyone's interested in calling in, again, the number down below, 719-782-8871. Colin, I believe I'm set up all good here, but if you want to just test it out even and call the number yourself just to make sure. You don't have to be an expert in some of this. If you've got a quick question, you just want to share your thoughts, feel free to call in. For those of you, if it's your first time watching, you've been enjoying this, please press the subscribe button down below. We still have more content that has not been released from my second trip to East Palestine. Yep, so it does look like we're good. Folks, please call in here. Colin, I do see you there. I guess we can test it out to make sure it works here. We've got Colin. Yes, awesome. We are all good. All right, I'm going to drop you here, Colin.
Oh no.
Let's see. All right, thanks for bearing with us here as I'm learning the system here. Again, you can call in 719-782-8871. Also, I've mentioned I published a post on this on the Status Coup Substack earlier today. That is another place that you can go to get more information from Status Coup. Why are kids being allowed to go on toxic Easter egg hunt in East Palestine? I've been trying to work on publishing more here in the Status Coup Substack, as well as Zaina. We just heard from Zaina. She's covering a lot of what's going on in some of the state houses and whatnot as well. And it looks like we do have a call coming in here. Let's see. We'll pick up the first one that got in here. It looks like Johnny Mitchell. Hey, you are Johnny Mitchell. Hey, Johnny, how's it going? You're on here on Status Coup. How's it going?
It's going fine. How you doing, Louis?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I got to commend you on the great job you're doing, man. You're doing it's a fantastic job.
No, I really appreciate it. It's when I first started getting into this sort of stuff, even just working with Status Coup in general over the last year, never thought that it would turn into something like this. I mean, it's a terrible story, unfortunately, to have to cover, but I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to have met a lot of these residents here who are just going through some terrible shit, as you've seen if you've been watching.
Yes, I have been watching, and I do have a question for you, Louis, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Have y'all thought about doing a? I know you're trying to put these people's story out there, but have you ever thought about doing like a weekly Zoom call with residents there, just to keep everyone informed on what's going on and how they're being treated?
That's a good idea. We haven't thought about doing a Zoom call with residents. I can tell you though that both Jordan and I have been in close contact with a lot of residents, and that I actually was poking around in some of our analytics on the YouTube channel to see where folks are watching from. And we do have a lot more folks watching from Ohio now. But I do like the idea of some sort of consistent meeting with folks. So we have not done that at this point, but I like the idea.
Yeah. I just think it'd be very informative, to, I don't know if we could do it weekly or something like that, And I'm watching. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. So
okay, nice. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you watching, and I will say one Zoom call that we do is we do a monthly members call with folks who are Status Coup members. But it would be interesting to try to do something for East Palestine residents. I like the idea.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Well.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it. Keep doing a great job, Louis.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny. We appreciate it. And we'll move on to the next in line here. All righty. Is this Leslie we've got on the air here? Is this Leslie?
Yes.
Awesome, Leslie. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate the call.
Thanks for all you do, and I hope that you guys can spread this out and inform Pennsylvania. I live in Pennsylvania. I live approximately an hour away, but I work in Moon Township, Coraopolis.
Okay.
I'm very sick.
Oh,
sometimes we smell the chemical in Moon Township when I'm working. We have a lot of clients that are sick, a lot of workers that are sick. The first time I went to a hospital out here, I'm in Washington, I was told we don't treat chemicals here yet. The key word was yet.
Wow.
They treated me with steroids and albuterol nebulizer treatment.
That's in a lot of residents that I've spoken with closer to East Palestine, that is similar treatment that they were getting. And you said near Coraopolis?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for folks listening, that is to the northwest of Pittsburgh, basically right between Pittsburgh and East Palestine. So I mean, that's less than an hour.
Right by the airport.
Yeah, that's less than an hour from East Palestine. I've done that drive a handful of times now. That's because flying in and that's
really a half an hour, I would say.
Yeah.
According to Google, it's about a half an hour.
No, and I mean, again, your concerns from other Pennsylvania residents as well. We played that interview with Ashley Bennett. There were other folks that I talked to at a hearing that a video was posted earlier today in Pennsylvania. Are these symptoms stuff that you're still experiencing even today?
Yes. I went to MedExpress Monday, which was approximately 2 weeks from being treated at the hospital, maybe a week and a half. I went to MedExpress and the doctor put me on 5 different medicines. I was put on doxycycline. Huh. My eyes were infected. He put me on a antibiotic eye drop. He gave me steroids, an inhaler, and a cough suppressant.
That's
and I'm still sick.
Yeah, that's terrible. I'm very sorry to hear that you're dealing with some of these symptoms, and they sound similar to symptoms that other folks are dealing with. If you don't mind, maybe send us an email, info@statuscoup.com, and I'd love to be able to follow up with you potentially the next time we're out there.
Okay, I could show you on my paperwork. The doctor told me to either make them let me wear a respirator at work, or I need to quit my job. And then he pounded on the counter because I told him, yeah, you can't just, how do you just quit your job without another job? And I love my job.
Right.
And he pounded on the counter and asked me if I wanted to die.
Jeez.
That's pretty telling. And right on my paperwork, it says I have sinusitis. But it also says exposure to chemicals from train derailment. He wrote it right on my paperwork.
Wow. The fact that it's actually written on the paperwork too is big. We started to see, in the beginning, a lot of places were not, writing chemical exposure, but the more and more folks we talk to, even, 10, 15, even further away now, having chemical exposure being listed as a reason is big. And I mean, I'm not glad that you had to deal with it, but I'm glad that folks are starting to take that into account as a reason for some of these symptoms from happening. Please, definitely, we'd love to follow up. If you could email info@statuscoup.com. I'd love to talk further about some of this as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for what you do, and I pray they don't let those children out there.
I hope not either. The fact that it's even a discussion that they're thinking about doing it, let alone it's already a public event, is crazy to me. I don't have any kids, but I've got little nieces, and I know that I wouldn't want my nieces over there. And I've met some of these kids, unfortunately, in East Palestine, and I hope that they do not end up over at this event. I'm betting that many of them will not, because most of the parents that I've spoken with are definitely concerned still. But that does not mean that some of these kids are not going to go there, unfortunately, as there's a small segment of the town that wants to get back to business as usual. Leslie, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You take care. And wear your respirator.
Will do. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
All righty. We've got another. I'm going to answer another call here in a second. We'll take a couple more too. So if you want to call 719-782-8871, we are now going to bring in Bruce Robbins from Buffalo. Bruce, how's it going?
Actually, it's his mom, Candy.
Hey, Candy, how we doing?
I'm doing good, and I absolutely love your show. I look for it every day, and I just wanted you to know that. And I want to start out, too, by telling everybody affected, I am so sorry for everyone and feel badly. I live in New York State, and I want you to know that a lot of people are talking about this train derailment. It was south that I've heard of is Gallup, Ohio. It's been seen from Cleveland. The previous caller is from Garopolis. I am only about an hour and a half from her. The morning after that uncontrolled burn, I thought there was a storm rolling in. The sky was so black up here, and I called my cousin and said, "Have you seen the weather for today? Is it supposed to?" She's like, "No, why?" And I said, "Well, the sky looks like we're going to get a torrential downpour." And she said, She says, "Did you know that there was a train derailment last night, not far from us?" And I'm like, "No." And I got to looking, and I called my son, Bruce, in Erie, and he said, "Mom, that's the smoke."
Wow. So
it's like,
to be clear, where were you seeing this from?
A place called Dunkirk, New York.
Dunkirk, New York. Jeez. Yeah.
I'm between Erie, Pennsylvania, and Buffalo, New York.
Wow. So I mean, that's a significant distance to be able to still be seeing the smoke in the air. Sorry, continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I have family that live down just across the river from Ravenswood, West Virginia, and they've been affected by this. They've seen it.
Yep.
And I have grandchildren down there. People don't think, and it's like, this is going to be widespread, and I'm going to tell you right now, there is no way that all these uppity ups don't know that. It's bigger than they want to admit. They're going to try to hide and run from it. And I have a question too, Louis.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where's that mayor of that city? That is his city. I'm going to get a little agitated here. Excuse me.
That's fine.
But he was elected by the people of East Palestine. Where is he at? Why does he not have a bonus and call these officials up and demand to see their paperwork, to be a part of the testing, to be present? He has that legal right as the elected official for that municipality. And if he'd like an assistant, I would sign up for that job, because you know what? East Palestine's going to be another Flint. It's going to be another Pitcher, Oklahoma. It's going to be another Love Canal in Niagara Falls. Love Canal, 60 years later, is having problems again. The people that live in the safe zone are now having puddles come up. It's leaking, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a mess.
No, unfortunately, you're right. It seems like the kind of thing that is gonna end up in the same category, like you just mentioned, like another Flint, another Love Canal. Residents are doing what they can, and fortunately, you know, they're getting guidance from some of these families from Flint and other places of what they should be doing now. But to your point about the mayor, I mean, it's a tough one, and I agree with you in a lot of senses on this. But it's also one of those things that this is a very small town mayor who we're talking a town of 4,500 people, right? Mayor in East Palestine is not even it's not a full-time job. It's literally a part-time job. And I would imagine that there are a lot of forces. And I'm not trying to, again, I think I agree with you that he should be doing all these things that you're saying. But I think that, and he's even alluded to this, that he's in over his head on this sort of thing. And that there are some immense powers at play here influencing him to do one thing or the other. That is not an excuse for him. And I agree with what you're saying, but I think that is a big part of what we're seeing unfold. I'd love to sit down and talk with the mayor at some point for a longer interview. I'd let you know. We'll air the whole thing unedited, sort of thing. We'll see if we can make that happen in the future. I agree with a lot of the points you're trying to make, but I also think that he is in a very difficult position. But you know, when you start to see things like we're seeing right now, with you've got an Easter egg hunt going on in town, that is not something that you know, he can come in and say, hey, this is a bad idea.
You know, that's endangering the welfare of children.
Agreed.
I don't care. Anytime that there is a suspected situation that could cause a child, you know, and nothing is down there other than it's contaminated and it's bad. Yeah. Those children have no business being outside.
Agreed.
No.
Thank you so much for the call, Candy. We appreciate it. And you as well. I mean, if you want to follow up, it sounds like you and potentially your son saw some of these clouds, not clouds, but some of the smoke and whatnot blowing in as far as, you know, in between Erie and Buffalo. If you've got any photos or anything you want to share, please send us an email, info@statuscoup.com. We'd love to hear about it.
Cool. Thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Candy. Alrighty.
Yep.
And
bye.
I'm going to take a couple more calls here still let me make sure we can, there we go. I'm going to take a couple more calls here as well. I've got at least one queued up here. If you're interested in making a call, feel free. I'll probably do, now it looks like we've got three more in here. I was going to say about 3 more. So, you know, if you want to try to sneak in another one, we'll go ahead and do it. But we'll bring in the next caller here. Hey, how's it going? You're on Status Coup right now. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, this is Trina.
Hi, Trina. How are you? What was your question, or what are your thoughts on what's going on here in East Palestine still?
Well, that's how I found you, actually. I heard a whisper of a train derailment and some issues, and your coverage has been very thorough and caring, and I really appreciate you being able to get their messages out.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
There is another channel I was watching that was talking about some coincidences adding up for the area. And the one I'm curious about that I haven't heard you discuss with any of the residents is that they were given some kind of My ID government. I don't know if it's actually a device or if it's just a barcode, but it's supposed to like track their health.
I think I have seen reports of this. People have also talked about like a wristband or something potentially that goes with it or something. But I've heard of, so I had seen some reports of this. Nothing in any like major outlet, which doesn't mean anything. I mean, if you watch this, you know that we're not taking anything what anyone's saying at full face value. You've got to kind of question all of these things. I have not.
Really, you do.
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, that's the reality we live in today. I haven't talked specifically with residents about this. I have talked to a lot of people and they've confided in me a lot of different information. I've yet to have this conversation where anyone's talking about a health tracking app or anything like this. My general thoughts on that would be that, like, I think that this is a town that probably would have been skeptical about signing up for something like that to begin with. Just given
Yeah, it seemed like a random small town to do that kind of a test.
Right. I will shoot a couple texts to some residents to see if we find anything out about that, and if we do, we'll definitely talk about it in a future live stream. But the fact that I haven't actually encountered anyone with it, and at this point I've been talking to, I have lost count of how many residents I've either interviewed on or off the record at this point, and it hasn't.
And that's why I was curious, because you have been talking to people who actually live there, who are actually in the middle of this,
right?
And none of them have brought it up. So I was just curious, even if it's a real thing, or if it's just like a conspiracy that's not got any backing to it.
Right.
But if there is people in that town who have this, I would think, regardless of the reason that they were given these things, but I would think that that would be more validity on their health concerns.
No,
be like, look, I have this. Now it's different since the derailment.
No, I'll definitely ask around a little bit, and if we get any more info, I will we'll be sure to talk about it on the show.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate the support, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for everything you guys do.
Thanks. All righty, we're gonna move on. We'll take another one or two here. And if you guys are again just watching for the first time here, please smash the like button on the video. Consider subscribing down below. It's an easy thing you can do to help us out. We're going to be posting way more content still from my last trip to East Palestine. I've been there twice. We're talking about the third trip coming up here at some point. So if you're able to just give us a subscribe, it helps. You get a notification to get notified when we post content. You're more likely to see some of our content. So it's an easy thing you can do to help support us. We're going to bring on the next caller here. Hey there, you are on Status Coup. Who am I talking with?
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. I'm actually currently watching you right now. So I'm actually an East Tennessee resident.
Okay.
And I do have an uncle and an aunt that live in Ohio. And the last time I had talked to my biological father, he also lived in Ohio. So I just want to let East Palestine know that, like, we see you, we hear you.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
So I have like one question, and I've noticed that not even just with this problem, but I mean, just in general, our government's been, excuse my language, really shitty to the residents of East Palestine, you know, and of other states as well. Is there a way that, since our government is not doing their job the way they should be, maybe do you think the state or maybe just the town of East Palestine would be able to sue as a whole, Norfolk Southern?
So actually, we have seen at the state level, and I agree with you that the government has done a shitty job, frankly, at all levels. The state of Ohio actually has officially sued Norfolk Southern now, which is great that they're doing that, sure. But the one issue with that is suing Norfolk Southern is not going to do anything to help the residents of East Palestine now. You know, that lawsuit will likely be dragged out for years. And if any money gets to folks who are actually living in East Palestine right now and have actually been affected by this, I would be very surprised. So it is possible for that to happen. I'm unfortunately, though, just not sure what good that's going to do for folks now. There's a slim chance it could lead to money for some of these folks years down the line. But at that point, unfortunately, the damage health-wise could already be done and a lot of some of these other things. So It is possible to do it, but I'm not sure how much help it's going to be at that point. A lot of residents themselves are also, some of them are involved in class action lawsuits. Some of them are involved in their own lawsuits.
I have maybe one other idea.
Okay.
Of course, it would be if you would be willing to help me, as I currently don't have a platform, and you are, you have your own platform. What if there was like a GoFundMe or something that was set up that could receive funds that could be sent from states around the country? Like I said, I'm in East Tennessee. I live in Knoxville, and just turned 26. I'm a mom of 2, and I know that I would be devastated if I had to have my little boy and my little girl in such a horrible situation. But if maybe we could set up like a money donation, whether it's through like
so I'll say if you look on our Status Coup Substack, which is just substack.statuscoup.com, we have a post that actually links to a variety of GoFundMes from folks in East Palestine that you can actually go ahead and look at and make your own decisions. We can only vet so much. So we spoke to a resident who I definitely trust at this point, who kind of pointed us to this page where there's a whole list of them. So you can check that out. And Colin, I don't know if you're able to find that. We can probably put it in the chat here for folks to look at as well. So keep an eye out for that in the chat. Thank you so much for the call. We really appreciate it. And thank you for watching as well.
Thank you, guys. God bless. And East Palestine, we love you.
Thank you. Alrighty. We have 2 more people in the queue right now, and we're gonna keep it with just those 2 calls. So if you are currently in the queue, I will answer your call, but we're not going to do any more calls after that. Right now, we are going to bring in this person may live very close by. Let's see here. Hey there, you are on Status Coup here. Who am I talking with?
Christine Cook.
Christine, awesome. Thank you for calling in. It says here you live 3 miles away from East Palestine.
Yes, I do. I live in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And Pennsylvania really hasn't did anything for a month until then they decided that it was a bad situation, and all sorts of places around me, they have black soot in their yards. You're afraid to let I have grandkids. My daughter lives in East Palestine. I have a lot of family in East Palestine. I have a couple stepsisters that live like 2 blocks from the derailment. My daughter lives like a block and a half from the derailment, but she's moved out of her house because there's no way she can stay there because of the chemical smell. And she has 2 small children. It's just a big mess. And my friend lives a quarter mile from the derailment in Pennsylvania. And they decided the Sunday before they did the chemical burn, or they nuked us, as I would say.
Yep.
They decided that they would tell them they have to evacuate in PA. So she had like a little less than like a couple hours to get out because she had to go to work the next morning.
Yeah.
So they were so far behind on the ball. I don't know. PA really let us down on, coming in and helping us. Now they're trying to.
Yeah.
But it's just so devastating.
Agreed. And Pennsylvania in a couple senses. So first off, no one talked about Pennsylvania in the beginning of this, the first couple of weeks. Whereas like, again, if this train just went a couple of hundred more feet, we'd be talking about the Darlington train derailment. You know what I mean? This is right next to Darlington. And I just looked at a map very quickly. You live one over. You live in Darlington. Okay.
Yeah, I live in Darlington. We watched the big smoke cloud come over our house.
Yeah.
The night of the derailment, my daughter and my grandkids came to my house because it was all going on so fast, and they were just going around telling everybody to evacuate the town.
Jeez. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's supposed to be one car they were going to, supposedly, burn, and it was going to be a controlled burn, and all of a sudden, then it ended up being 5.
Right. Which is right. And we were actually, I don't know if you were at this, we were actually at the hearing last Tuesday, I believe, that was at the Darlington firefighter or the fire department.
Yes, we were there last week, but I don't know if it was Tuesday or not.
Yeah, I forget.
It was when all the state representatives and everybody was there.
Yep.
Yes, we were there.
Yep. Yeah. So we were there as well. And I mean, they talked about that at that hearing, that like, how did the decision get made to go from 1 to 5 cars? And was there any input from any Pennsylvania officials at that point? And it sounds like Pennsylvania was basically, I mean, part of this should be on the Pennsylvania officials for not getting involved when it happened, but also on Norfolk Southern too, for not trying to bring Pennsylvania into the fold when it's pretty clear that, generally speaking, in this part of the country, the wind blows from west to east. A lot of this stuff was definitely going to be blown right into Pennsylvania, right into your community, frankly. And it doesn't seem like there was a lot of input from folks in your community.
Oh, no, I think they kind of thought and evacuate like a 1 mile radius.
Right.
Okay, now you're telling me the wind is not going to blow farther than 1 mile. You're okay.
Right. No, there's a perfect bubble around the 1 mile zone. Nothing goes in or out of that. You don't know about that?
Yeah, well, that's what I thought too. I'm like, really? They think people, you know what? And then I read comments where they thought, well, East Palestine was a bunch of hicks, and they wouldn't realize it. No, not everybody in East Palestine. A lot of people are well educated. I'm sorry to put Norfolk Southern and tell them that, but no, you can't just throw down the train tracks over where it happened and have all that contaminants when there was 100,000 pounds of it,
right?
And just think you're going to just keep on riding your cars over it.
No, you're.
I'm like, there's so many people out there that are in the situation where we're all middle class working people. They just can't get up and leave their homes. They're stuck in the bad situation where I know, for instance, there's a couple people I can tell you right now that can't go back to their homes because every time they're there, they're sick. Their head hurts. Their nose is bothering them. They're getting rashes.
Yep. And I mean, we're hearing that from and it's not just a couple people. It's a lot of people.
No, I know it firsthand because I know these people. I see these people. I'm here. You know what I mean? So I know what's going on.
Yeah. No, it's
you know what I mean? And a lot of people are so like, oh, well, I think people's making up stuff. No, why don't you come and you see these people and see what is going on and see they cannot move out of their homes. If Norfolk Southern wants to make it right, then they should come in, help these people. We'll pay off your mortgages. We'll give you some moving expense to be able to relocate because we ruined your town. And there's only been like one other town that was like this. And they considered it a Superfund site.
Right.
Well, it was contaminated for it just come uncontaminated 38 years later.
Well, and now instead of a Superfund site, East Palestine's getting an Easter egg hunt. So.
Oh, no. You know what? Around the site down there, I seen they deemed it a Superfund site. But only where they were doing the contaminants and digging up the dirt. But then I read up on it, a Superfund site, everybody should be evacuated for 1.8 miles. And they didn't do that.
Right. No, the whole situation is outrageous, and the handling of it has been terrible. I mean, we've covered it quite a bit throughout here. I want to say, if you're interested, please send us an email, info@statuscoup.com. I would love to follow up with you, considering you live right in Darlington. To either do an interview at some point or to, the next time we're out in the area, maybe we can connect and do an interview in person. Thank you so much for calling.
My daughter,
go ahead.
My daughter's been doing a lot of interviews.
Okay.
Her name's Ashley McCollum, and she's been doing a lot of interviews for East Palestine and stuff.
Yep.
So she's a big advocate.
We've had Ashley on quite a bit.
Okay, I was going to say that's my daughter. So she, you know the situation then. We have 10, 15 family members over there.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. Thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, and have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Alrighty, we're going to bring in one more caller here. Let's go ahead. Alrighty. Hello, you are on the air here. Who am I speaking with?
This is Maureen, Janice, and I do live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am avidly following Status Coup on this disaster. I am going to be relocating to Ohio this summer, and Columbus, as a matter of fact. I'm retired, and I have my whole professional background has been in administrative work, paralegal, governmental work, and I would love to offer you gratis as a volunteer any help you could use with back office stuff, looking up things, doing emails, sending out the letters, putting the stamps on, grunt work. And I'd be very happy to offer you those services.
Well,
I'm doing it now for some family members in another area, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I did a lot of advocacy when back in the 80s for latchkey children, and we got a lot of good results for that. And this is something that I am so believe in this whole process of not making normal what's abnormal. That was the best phrase I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And thank you for the offer, Maureen. We might take you up on it. Is this Maureen from the members call as well?
Yes.
Okay, I thought I saw the name. I recognized the name, and the voice sounded familiar. Thanks for calling in, Maureen. And yeah, send us an email, info@StatusCoup, and Jordan might put you to work. We'll see.
I'll be glad to. I'm going to be up in Columbus in August time frame. My daughter's lives up there, and she's asked me to, I'm retired, and say, hey, Mom, how about coming a little bit close to us now? And I said, absolutely.
Great.
And
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, Maureen, thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Awesome. You have a great afternoon.
You too, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Maureen.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. And here, give me 1 second here. I'm going to give a couple more thoughts here. We'll make sure we get this ended. And Maureen, I just mentioned a members call there. Maureen is a Status Coup member, and every month we do a monthly members call. It's a Zoom call. I'll be there. Jordan will be there. Zaina, Tina, Ron, a lot of the Status Coup team. Colin will be in there. Kim could potentially be there as well. And we all go on. We get questions from folks. We give you an update as to what's going on. The last one was really informative for folks. I hope I was able to give a lot of behind the scenes of what we had uncovered in East Palestine, the process of how we were able to pull it all together. And that is only a benefit that we're able to give to our paying members who make all of this coverage possible to begin with. Me going to East Palestine is difficult to be able to go do. And this person who just mentioned Spanish translator, send us an email, info@StatusCoup, because that's something that for another potential project in the future might need. But yeah, I mean, it's only possible to be able to do these trips to places like East Palestine, for Jordan to continue to go back to Flint for year after year after year by folks becoming members. Literally $5 a month. It might not sound like it makes a big difference, but it does. You got a little bit of a glimpse there of hearing from people who are getting sick for the first time, hearing from the woman from Darlington, Pennsylvania, from hearing from some of these other folks who live further away, who are having experience with these chemicals being blown into their area. When I was in East Palestine the last time, you can't walk a block down the street without having another person want to come up and talk to you saying, hey, this is exactly what happened to me and my family, and this is what happened to me and my family. And the unfortunate reality is, when I'm in these situations, it sounds terrible, but it starts to feel normal. But nothing about it is normal. Nothing about this situation is normal. This should not be happening. The fact that residents of East Palestine are still left to beg Norfolk Southern, the company that caused all of these problems in the first place, for help is outrageous. Where is the federal government? Why are they not here? This is insane. Why is this not happening? I see we just got a new member right there. Thank you, JM King 2008, for becoming a new member. We really appreciate that. You can also do that at statuscoup.com/join. You can do it on YouTube like he did as well. That is another option. This is outrageous, though. Again, this is a town that does not have soil samples done yet. To get back to the very beginning of this, they don't have soil samples from their city park. The entrance to their city park is still a cleanup site where you've got a contaminated creek and aerators blowing this contaminated water into the air. And there is going to be an Easter egg hunt in this park on Easter weekend. How is this normal? How can this be seen as something okay to do? Again, we talked to resident Candace DeSanzo at the beginning of this. If you're just kind of tuning in, we're going to wrap this up here in a second. But I encourage you to go back and listen to what Candace had to say about this, because she's not happy. She's a mother of 5. She knows that this is potentially dangerous. Her kids herself have been sick, have ended up in the hospital in some cases. This shouldn't be happening. You're welcome for the shout out. You get the shout outs once you when you become a member. So we appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead here and read through some of the super chats from the show today. Again, thank you all so much for watching. We'll go through some of these super chats here, though. We've got Christina Massey Stuckey, $4.99 super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Christina. Tony D, send Alan Shaw to the gulag. Don't disagree with you there, Alan Shaw. I mean, in each one of these hearings that we continue to see him go to and continue to just say, we're going to do what's right. I am so sorry to the residents of East Palestine. Guys, Alan Shaw is so sorry. It's okay. He's sorry. He's sorry. We can all move on now. Zach Williams, $5 with a super sticker. Thank you, Zach. We appreciate the support. Thank you very much. We had a new member, Susan Boron. Thank you, Susan, for becoming a new member. Again, membership is the only way we're able to make this sort of stuff happen, to be able to send me back to East Palestine, to have Jordan be going back to Flint in a couple weeks here. Membership, it might not seem like a lot, $5 a month. It might not seem like it's going to make a difference. It really makes a difference to us. That's the cost of a cup of Starbucks coffee. If you want to drink that, not a fan personally, but $5 a month to go do that. Das Bosch Fleisch, $5.99. Appreciate the support there. So establishment figures tried to smear Lewis. I hope he welcomes their hatred. I think that was in response to when I had the notion to be able to say that East Palestine residents should be able to sell their homes if they want to, and that either the federal government or Norfolk Southern should step up to do so. When I suggested that on Twitter, I got met with all sorts of people telling me that I'm Russian disinformation and that no one in East Palestine would even want that. So that was interesting. It was also interesting to find out that, a day or 2 days later, for the first time, it was actually brought up in the Senate by none other than Ted Cruz, which was surprising to me. But for the first time, it was actually been talked about in the Senate. We'll see if anything comes through with that. But yes, I feel like I've officially made it by being called Russian disinformation at this point. Because, if anything bad happens, let's blame it on the Russians. And then, a year later, it'll be like, oh, actually, we were not able to prove that at all. So thank you for the $5.99 Das Bosch Fleisch. We appreciate it. Dale Jensen became a new member. Thank you very much. And we already highlighted the new member, J.M. King. We really appreciate that as well. With that, guys, again, I published a piece on Substack earlier today, the Status Coup Substack. It's literally substack.statuscoup.com, covering a lot more of the details of this Easter egg hunt coming up. We did reach out to, and it looks like we got a new super chat I just saw here that I don't want to miss. Wow, Nathan Eberly, $49.99. I am a member and I appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for that generous donation. We really appreciate that super chat. So again, StatusCoup.com, StatusCoup.substack.com to see that latest piece. You also will get notified when we put out other pieces. I know Zayn is working on some stuff unrelated to East Palestine, on some of the legislation being passed in state houses and all sorts of other stuff. Jordan put together a piece last week kind of comparing and contrasting what's going on in East Palestine to what happened in Flint. So lots of good stuff coming there. If you're interested, you can give me a follow on Twitter as well, at LewisD217. Otherwise, we will see you all later. Enjoy your weekend. We're going to have a lot more coming up soon. If you can become a member to support us, the link's right there, statuscoup.com/join. Really appreciate all your support. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your weekend.